Hello, I'm Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer Information Systems from the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video is going to take a look at creating a 15-piece sliding puzzle using GameMaker Studio version 2. And what do I mean by that? So let me click here. So what I mean by this is this kind of game. Definitely played this a lot when I was a little one, since I'm older than dirt. So this is a slide puzzle, so all you do is you go ahead and you push them up, down, left, and right into the little holes, and at least in this case, it's up to you what you want to do. Sometimes you want to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 15, and then after you've solved that a few times, you get bored, and then you try to do evens and odds and all sorts of stuff. I remember doing this non-stop between this and one of those labyrinth games that you would play with. Maybe you've seen those, maybe you haven't. But that's what we're trying to solve here. So I'm going to try to stay as true to this picture as possible. It's going to look a little different, obviously, because I'm going to use fonts, and I'm going to use colored rectangles and things like that. So we're not going to use any sprites from the outside world for this, but we're going to use what GameMaker can do for us. So I only need 2 sprites to make this work, and actually only two object types to make this entire thing work. And so we need to kind of have our what is our game world? What is the size of our play field? And for this, I'm not going to make it the full screen. I'm going to make it pretty tiny. So I'm only going to make it 200 and a little bit more for the border, in each of the 2 dimensions. Each of the buttons, they're not buttons. Each of the tiles themselves will be 50 by 50. So that's the understanding of where we're starting from. And so we can get to it in GameMaker starting right now. So creating that sprite, I'm just going to create the tile sprite. And I'm going to set that, just like I said, 50 by 50. I can resize it or scale, since I haven't done anything to the image just yet. And then I can go in and, trust me on this, just make it a white square. And so we'll fix this up as we go. But we just need a white square for the tile. Again, that is 50 by 50. And then the border itself, it needs a little more work, because we're going to use some of GameMaker's collision detection abilities in our favor here. So the border sprite, right now I'm going to make it 200 by 200. Trust me on this. Go with me on this. Apply that. Go inside of here. And just fill it with a color. I'm just going to use, it doesn't matter what color, just fill it in with something for the moment. And then when you're done with that, you can go back in here, because that's going to be the actual physical play field. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use center resize specifically, and I'll make this, 208 by 208. And so now you see there's a little tiny border around this thing, which is kind of cool, right? So now with that understanding, I can go back in, I can fill in, I'll make it a yellow border, just so it's, no, we're going to be using yellow for something else. Let's use, are we using yellow? I don't remember what colors. White and red? Let's just pick something that isn't. I'll use orange, some kind of orange color. And you can feel free to use whatever colors you want. And then what we can do is we can use the magic wand tool to eliminate everything in the middle. Isn't that pretty cool? Because now we have a 200 by 200 square with a 4-pixel border completely surrounding that. So the final step, and the final couple steps here, is to go back and actually fix this. We'll need this in a little bit. Let's change the origin to 4 by 4. And the reason for that is the little origin is going to be at the first pixel of the clear area. So basically, and you'll see when we go to do this why this is important. And then the final step here is for collision mask. We want to get rid of, we'll use precise slow. We want to get rid of this detection of the clear image. So like the only part of the image we want to be detected is the orange boundary, and everything in the middle is not going to be part of the collision detection. And a lot of times when you do this, you have to go in and manually fix this up. And I'm going to use 0207, 0207. So it uses the full image, but only precisely checks for the pixels that are on the boundary, around the border here. So, pretty much for the moment here, that's all we need for sprites. And so how to get this thing going, let's try it out. So let's see, I'll need a few objects. I'll need a border. which uses the border sprite, obviously. And then I will need a tile. Just one, trust me on this, tile. I don't know if I can use the word tile. We'll see in a second. Use the word tile sprite. Apparently I can, so that's awesome for me. And so we'll come back and fill that stuff in the moment. And the way I'm going to set this up, you can rename the room if you want. I don't necessarily care. But I'm going to drag in just one border, and that's it. And you're like, what? What's going on? So there's always a balance that we try to do here, especially with GameMaker Studio, between the what you see is what you get editor and trying to write code that can make our lives easier. And like other tools like Unity, Unreal, those kind of engines, they have a little more sophistication in the way you can set things up here in the what you see is what you get editor. But in GameMaker, it kind of leaves a little bit to be desired, which is all right. We just kind of get used to it. But so what we're going to do here is this border object is going to manually generate, or it's going to generate the tiles when the object is created. So we only need to worry about dragging one of these things in. And what's kind of cool about this, if we do this right, we can have multiple objects existing in the same game at the same time. So I'll just leave 4 open. Just make sure they don't overlap. So now I can come back to my border and say, what do I want to do? In a create event, and I'm using code, I'm not using drag and drop for this stuff. And I'll make this a little bigger once I get going here. I like to make it look like a C function, so that's why I use the curly braces. You don't have to. Oops, I don't even know what I just did there. Whoa, what did I just do? Okay, but you don't have to. And F8 actually makes things larger, so you can actually see what's going on a little bit. And so what I want to do is I want to generate 16 tiles, and then once we have the tile, or 16, and then basically eliminate one of them because we need an opening for the pieces to be pushed around. So I can use, oops, what language am I in? I'll have to learn to type and do all this talk at the same time. So I want to say, oops, make it a 1, because I want to print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so forth and so on here. So I want a 4x4 grid because I'm creating a 16 square or 15 piece slide puzzle. So let's see. So I can say var I equals 0, I is less than 4, plus I, and for int j equals 0, j is less than 4, plus j. So I have a 4x4 grid here, a doubly nested loop. I'm so sorry about I'm so used to writing in other languages. So var I and j, and so I want to set up. Let me bring this so I can make this a little. There we go. So I can say I want to do an instance create, and we'll come back and fix this. Instance create layer. Okay, so I want I'll just for the moment just kind of fill it in, and because the code's going to be a little complicated here, I'm just going to fill it out by line here. I only have the basic general instances layer, and then I want to create a tile. But now X and Y, so if I do run this, yeah, I haven't used value yet, that's okay. But if I do run this, I have to drag this over. But you see that it is creating at least one tile, and technically it's creating 16 of them all at the same spot. So we need to kind of drag and fill this thing out a little bit differently. So I can change this up and say X plus I times sprite width. So this is making things general. So even if I change the sprites later on, I don't have to rewrite the code, which is pretty cool. And then, oops, sorry, it's not I for this, it's J for that. My apologies. So X plus I times sprite width and Y plus J times sprite height. And in this case, they're squares, but if you ever made them rectangles or something, things could be different. So, whoops, what did I do? So what did I do wrong here? Well, that was unexpected, but hey, these things happen all the time. The sprite width applies to the border object. But I'm in my head, I'm thinking of the sprite width in relation to the tile object. So you can actually go ahead and you're like, oh shoot, I can actually set I think it's get sprite width. Or maybe sprite get width. It's one of these things, I know you can. There we go. And then you could say which object type, and you could say, or which sprite type, and you go tile sprite. And you can do the same thing here. Sprite get height tile SPR. This is the problem with trying to make things a little larger. Everything kind of gets screwed up. And I just need one extra parenthesis there, I believe. That's all I need. So now if I run this another time. Okay, so good. So now you can see that there's 16 squares. And again, forgive me, I'm used to running with dual monitors, and not every single time will I remember that this thing's running off on another screen. But now you can see I've got 16 tiles. So now my next step is, okay, so what I would want to do is put a number value into this thing so that each of the tiles, like what number am I going to print? What number am I? What number tile? I'm a 1, I'm a 2, I'm a 15, whatever that is. And what I can do here is I can actually, use this function. This instance, the create instance function actually returns, I call it a pointer, but it's like a reference or an ID number. And I can say, give me my, I like to say ints equals. I'll just shift everything over here so it's a little more visible here. And so now when this function, the instance creator, creates this object, it actually gives me access, so I can actually go in and say, hey, your value is going to be my value. And then I can say plus plus value, so that it starts out with a 1 for the first one, and it's going to go across. Oh shoot! Let me flip flop this. Oh yeah, we'll see it. Let's just try it out. So I say, okay, or maybe it's what you want it to be here. So let's see. Put the value into this object, and then increment the object. So the first one gets a 1, the second one will get a 2, the third one will get a 3, and so forth and so on. But right now, as long as it doesn't crash, nothing will change, because obviously we have to start tinkering with stuff on the side over here with the tile itself. And just for the sake of this, let me just throw another if in here and say if value does not equal 16, do. And what does that do? Something like this. There's my hole, the bottom right-hand corner. So there is no tile 16. There's only tiles 1 through 15 that are going to be generated and used. Okay, so I don't know why this gives me an uninitialized, but we'll see as we go. Ints.value equals value. Okay, and ints is the tile that gets created in each of these individual instances. Wow, it's been 12 minutes already. Okay, so in the tile itself, I want to go ahead and draw. You could use a font, you can use whatever. I'm not going to go ahead and do that since I'm already 12 minutes in. But what I'm going to do is use a draw event. And so I'm going to take over the draw and do a draw self. Because anytime you take over the draw event, you're like, oh, I know better than GameMaker what I'm going to do. So, and then I want to, just to get things going, I want to draw text. X, comma, Y, and then the value I want to draw is called value, because that was set over in the border object. So let's try it out, see what happens. Okay, and I believe white is the default color, so even if it is printing, we don't see it. So let me set draw color to see black. Oops, draw set color, sorry. There it is. And now you can see there are the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then, of course, what you're noticing here is that the numbers are, first off, in the upper right-hand corner, and second off, they're not centered or anything like that. So what do we want to do is we can draw, we can actually move this thing and be a little over, right? So I can say x plus sprite width times 0.5. I can spell. Comma, y plus sprite height times 0.5. Comma value. And let's try that out now. Oops. That's still not doing what I was expecting it to do. And that's because it's not truly centered. So I can do draw set h-align to set this horizontally aligned to the position I tell it to go to. And in this case, I want to do FA center. And then I can do the same for V align with FA middle. And now what does that look like now? There we go, a little better. Still not perfect. The font is not the best font in the world, but you can kind of tell that everything is a little better centered in relation to what we're trying to do. Okay, so coming back, the one thing I notice is it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the correct way we are anticipating it. So what I can do, and all that is I just did the I's and the J's incorrectly, so I can just swap out. I can just swap the for loops. And now over here, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 across. So we're getting closer. Okay, so then, like I said, when we come back here, when I do a draw event, I know better than GameMaker what I'm trying to do. And as you get more experience with GameMaker, you do know more than GameMaker what you're trying to accomplish. And coming back to our picture of what we're trying to accomplish, I want half of these things to be white and half of these things to be red. So how do I get about doing this? And this is why I'm using a white. This is why I'm using a white tile here. Was that what I can do here before the draw self is I can set the tint. I can tint this thing to either the red or the white, depending on if it's an even or odd number. So I can actually go ahead and say if my value mod 2 is equal to 0. If it's an even number, I want you to draw. Image blend is equal to C white. And if it's not, image blend should be red. And so what this does is, what is this mod 2 thing? It just basically, this is one of the easiest ways to determine if your value, that whatever that number is it even or is it odd? Because you're dividing by 2 and getting the remainder. So if you divide by 2 and you get a 0, it's an even number. If you divide by 2 and you get a remainder of 1, you get an odd. So half the time it'll come out white and half the time it'll come out red. And look at that, right? So all the odd numbers come out red, all the even numbers come out white. And if I want to then, just to be cute with it, I could go ahead and draw self, and then right after it, I could draw, draw set color C yellow or something. I'm just going to pick yellow. If it's terrible, it's terrible. I could fix it later, but I'm not going to for this demo. So, and then what I can do is I can draw a rectangle. And then I can choose what are my x coordinates. X comma y comma x plus sprite width comma y plus sprite height. And then I can say outline true, because I want this just to draw, y plus, not y underscore. Because I want this to not, I just want this to draw an outline. I don't want to fill the whole thing yellow. So what does that happen? Now you can kind of see, maybe it's, like I say, maybe I didn't choose the right color, the best color. I can just, I said I wasn't going to do it, but let's make it blue. Blue should come in a little nicer. And there we go. Now you can see, now we have a little border around all of the little images. So again, you can tinker with this, can play with it a little more. Or if you want to make it just a little thicker, you could say, oh, I want x plus 1, y plus 1, x plus sprite width minus 1, and x plus sprite height minus 1. Try it another time, and now I have a slightly thicker blue border for each of the pieces. And so for right now, graphically, I think we have everything that we want this thing to be. We're at 19 minutes. Shouldn't be too much longer now. We just have to finish up the behavior of this thing now. Because now all I want to do is when I click on these things, if I can go to the open hole, I want to do it. And if that, like somewhere here, if I can't find an open space, leave it alone. And I can do that for every tile, since I only have one tile object working for this entire thing. Okay, excuse me. Let me have a drink here. My throat's getting parched. Okay, so last step is writing the actual code. The only code that goes into this entire thing, like I said, we got our border piece, we've got our tile piece, but the only actual behavior code, this is all display level code, is in a click event, mouse left pressed event. And it's basically, why is it not working? Hold on a second. Okay. And all I'm going to do is just test one pixel in each of the 4 directions and go, if I can go there, go there. And so I'm just going to pick one of the 4 directions. So if. And this is where the fun of this, place free. This is where help is your best friend. Is this the function I want? Let's see. This returns, oh, no, I don't want the solid one. Shoot, what is the one I'm thinking of then if it's not place free? Place empty. Yes, you can use this function to check if your calling instance collides with any instance, anything. So this is only a good function if we're doing a simple program like this. You will find there are 4, 5, or 6 different instance functions, place functions, and you'll find the one that works for your current situation. But because everything is so simple, this place empty is what I'm looking for here. And what I can say is, I can say if, and basically, what is this function doing? It's like take yourself and pretend like you moved over. I'm going to say try to move right 1 pixel. That's what this is saying. Wait a minute, what? What does this place empty do? Hold on, one more time. Optional. Okay, oh, they added an optional parameter to this thing. Oh, that's interesting. That's new to me. Okay, so no, I don't care about the optional parameter. I can just say place empty and say, can I go 1 pixel to the right? And if it comes back true, that means it's empty. And if that's the case, I want to move over this tile to the sprite width because I'm trying to move to the right. And so just to kind of complete this, once you do it, a lot of this stuff we do in gaming, once you've done it once, you've done it 100 times. You got to do it. It's tedious. But what if I try going to the left? I have to go minus equals. And then, okay, that's fair enough. But now what if I want to try to go up? And so now that is a y minus. And so then this would be minus equals sprite height. And what if I want to go down? Then I steal this one. And I say, okay, y plus 1, sprite plus height. Now you have to put the else's in here. If you don't, things aren't going to work out like you expect because you'll try to immediately put something to the right. And if you can go to the right, that leaves a hole over to the left. So the next if statement would be like, hey, can I go left? And you will. So you'll actually go right and left in the same game frame, and it'll look like nothing ever happened. So you need to have this where it goes down exactly 1 path, or technically 0, if there's no holes for this thing to go to. Oh, and sorry about this. It's y minus equals and y plus equals. Because left and right affect the x-coordinate, up and down affect the y-coordinate, left and right affect it with the sprite width, and up and down with the sprite height. And that should do it. Click, click, up and down, left and right. And what's cool, right? It's since we modularize this and everything, like now all I have to do if I want to add another thing to my game is just drag it in, just drag the one border in. But every game is independent of every other game. It's really cool, right? So this, so one, what else to do? Maybe if you wanted to have a winning condition, I can think about putting that video. If you put in the comments that you want me, if you want me to spruce this up a little bit, or in that case, like how would I know if I won? Maybe the goal, I don't know what the goal would be, but we could set up any number of goals to tell the user, oh, try to change the number combination to something else. Or you name it, right? But at the end of the day, this is it. So one thing that might go wrong for you is if you did this border sprite incorrectly. Because everything is tied to this opening being not part of the collision mask of this object. So all of this has to be done. You have to make sure, like in this case, I made it 208 by 208. It's an exact 4-pixel border, and then there's a 200 by 200 pixel square that's completely empty. And then in here, I had to manually change the collision mask to be precise, and then affect the values for the entire image from 0 to 207. So this is where most of you might go wrong if you have something pop up that's incorrect. But otherwise, I think we have something working here. I had a little fun doing this. Hope you did too. And I'm going to be making a ton more videos over the next months. Coronavirus season here. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.